Last night for Holy Thursday, I revealed the theme that I'm using for my Triduum homilies that sort of ties them all together. And the theme begins with, "And be thankful." Little section from St. Paul's letter to the Colossians. And I'm pairing this idea of gratitude, of being thankful, with a book that I listened to probably about 10 or 12 years ago on decluttering and organizing, called The Magic Art of Tidying Up. And in this, the author talks about how whenever we're getting rid of things, we're decluttering, we have to take them all together. She uses shirts as an example. And she says you go through every single shirt individually. And you take that shirt and you look at it. And you decide if you're going to get rid of it or if you're going to keep it. And if you decide that you're going to get rid of it, you're supposed to look at the shirt and think about times that you've worn it. Experiences that you had whenever you wore this shirt, people that you were with. I didn't mention this last night, but I have one that I think of when I think about this. Fittingly, it's a white linen shirt. And I remember being at a concert with some friends, Hootie and the Blowfish concert in Colorado. I remember very vividly this picture I have of me in the desert of Arizona, in front of this chapel, wearing this white linen shirt. And so you take it and you think about these things, and then you thank the thing. You thank the shirt for what it has provided you, the covering it's provided you, the experiences that you had wearing this shirt. And so since we are in the last Triduum in this church, we're going through the liturgies of the Triduum and thanking God for the ways that He has blessed us and the ministry here at Wisdom, not just in general, but in this particular place. And so last night I reflected on two things proper to Holy Thursday. The Masses said here, somewhere around 50,000 Masses celebrated in this building since it was built in the 40s. And then I reflected also on the somewhere around 2.5 million times that Holy Communion has been received, in addition to the hours of adoration of the Blessed Sacrament and the profound transformations that have happened through these experiences in this place. And so today I want to continue that theme and reflect on the events of Good Friday, to reflect on other aspects of the ministry at Wisdom, what has happened here in this place linked to the events of this Friday that we call Good. The first aspect that I want to reflect on is that of suffering and loneliness at Wisdom. I'm going to leave you in a great place today. It's going to be wonderful. Today, Jesus suffers. And obviously, as we saw displayed very beautifully in the living stations, we know that Jesus suffers physical pain. Sweating blood, being scourged at the pillar, carrying his cross, and ultimately being nailed to that cross was the origin of the word excruciating, the pain of the cross. But he also suffers the weight of sin. We heard from the letter to the Hebrews, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has similarly been tested in every way, yet without sin. So let us confidently approach the throne of grace to receive mercy and to find grace for timely help." I sit in the confessional and hear all the time about the suffering induced by sin. People come to the confessional burdened by their own weakness, their own failing, their own inability to overcome sin. And so as I did last night, I ran some rough calculations. If we assume that we hear about 10 confessions a day over the course of the 84 years that we've been here, we have heard around 300,000 confessions. 300,000 times a person has come carrying the weight of their sin into the confessional. 300,000 times people have come face to face with their utter poverty. 300,000 times people have admitted simply by walking through the door of the confessional, I betrayed my Lord. I condemned Jesus. I nailed him to the cross. That is a difficult and a lonely place to be. Because when we go into the confessional, it's only me. Can't bring our friends with us. Can't bring our mom and our dad. It's only me, my sins, and the priest who acts in the person of Christ. And Jesus experienced his suffering in a terrible loneliness as well. In the garden, his friends were unable to keep him company, falling asleep. He stood alone before Pilate. And hanging on the cross, he was literally suspended between heaven and earth. Only a few faithful women and St. John remained there, and even them at a distance. Physically, emotionally, spiritually distant from him. So though he himself was sinless, he took on the weight and suffering of sin, and he felt it more deeply than anyone else possibly could. And there's also a loneliness here at Wisdom. We are primarily a college ministry. And so when people come here, they are away from familiar things. You come here as a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed college student, but leaving behind a school that you attended for years, somewhere usually between 4 and 13. And so it's a big new pond for you, a small little fish. You leave behind your family. You leave behind your childhood friends. And perhaps you did this excitedly. Right? Maybe you were happy to leave behind some people. But maybe you showed up here with these expectations. Maybe you showed up at Wisdom looking for new people. And that was tough. Maybe you didn't find a group as quickly as you thought you would. Maybe you felt overlooked and rejected in the place that you felt you should have been noticed and received most of all. All of this draws us deeper into union with Christ in a way that we don't normally think about. Usually when we say we want to be closer to God, we don't think about this. But this is the way he does it. Through loneliness, through suffering, he draws us closer to himself. And it brings to mind for me Psalm 55. It's a wonderful, terrible little psalm. For it is not an enemy that reviled me, that I could bear. Not a foe who viewed me with contempt, from that I could hide. But it was you, my other self, my comrade and friend, you whose company I enjoyed, at whose side I walked in the house of God. The person that I thought was supposed to be closest to me has betrayed me. But in all of this, if we're open to it, there's an invitation from the Lord to be more deeply united to him. So as I did last night, I will talk about wisdom in general, and then I will give my own personal experiences because I'm preaching and I can do that. So I've been on both sides of the screen in the confessional here at Our Lady of Wisdom. I remember sitting in the line along that back wall pre-renovation, had benches set up against the wall, so you'd sometimes be really close to the wall and sometimes far away because it's curved. You're falling in between the bench and the wall and super uncomfortable because you're going to confession already anyway. And I remember many times walking into that confessional, confessing my sins. Sometimes, once, even to no one. I walked in, I knelt down, I confessed. And there was a long pause. And I thought I had broken Father. Which was surprising to me because although I am not perfect, I thought they were pretty run-of-the-mill sins for a college campus. And eventually I got up and peeked behind the screen and he wasn't there. So then I got to do it again whenever he finally came. I remember going to confession and feeling the weight of my sins. I remember suffering for them. I remember feeling isolated and alone. I've also sat on the other side and heard a confession or two in my 7 years here as a priest. And so assuming that I've heard an average of 5 to 10 a day, that means that I've heard anywhere between 13,000 and 25,000 confessions here. This is, again, as with my masses, more than anywhere else. And I've seen the struggle in you, the penitents, committing the same sins over and over again. I've seen the desperation at times. I've seen the loneliness you feel, thinking that you're the only one who struggles with the same sin over and over, or with a particular sin. And I've seen the tension of having a deep, real, passionate desire to love the Lord, and yet over and over again condemning him to the cross. There's a loneliness in this for the person confessing, and there's a loneliness in this for the priest as well. There's a loneliness in being that representative, hanging, as it were, with Jesus between heaven and earth, standing in Jesus' place as the one who receives the sins of the people. If the priest is not a man of prayer, this will crush him. It gets pretty close sometimes, even if he is a man of prayer. And so again, I have to express my gratitude to you, the faithful of wisdom. So many times, not just here, but you too, I have been amazed with you whenever I say very seriously, please pray for me. And you look at me and you sort of stop me in my tracks. When you do look, you look at me in my eyeballs and you say, Father, I do pray for you by name every day. Your fidelity to praying for me does not make the loneliness go away, but it makes it possible to endure. And so I'm very, very grateful to you for your prayers for me in this place. The second thing that I want to reflect on is death at Wisdom. If you're thinking of coming here for college, this will be a great promotional piece. College is a transformative time in people's lives. They experience more freedom and independence than ever before. They move away from home a lot of times for the first time. There's also more responsibility, cooking and doing laundry and getting to class on your own. I saw a news article today that a Major League Baseball catcher did not play yesterday. He's a rookie. He didn't play yesterday because he overslept his alarm. And that gave me a lot of comfort. But in all of these things, there is a type of death that takes place. Friendships perhaps end or at least change. The distance from our parents can make us realize that we are growing up. We come to see that they will not be with us forever. A type of death to the security we felt with them as little children, when we believed that there was nothing they couldn't do. when we believe that nothing could harm us if we were with them. Perhaps we experience a death to the career or the life that we thought we would have when we showed up here. And this could cause confusion and upheaval in our lives. Might even experience physical death of a loved one or a friend for the first time. This has certainly been true for me in my time here. My first day as the parochial vicar here, when I had less gray hair and more patience, I walk into the office, first day on the job. I was a priest of 2 weeks, so I knew everything. Walk into the office, and one of the staff comes out and says, there was a motorcycle accident, and the hospital called for Father Sibley to go anoint them. And someone else said, oh, he's not here. And then they looked at me and said, wait, you're a priest? And I said, I am. And so I got in my car and I drove the only 1 mile that it is to the hospital, so not much time to think. But in that, I called one of my more mature priest friends and I said, I'm going to the hospital to anoint someone and I have no idea what I'm doing. And he coached me through it and told me just to read the book. That's why we have it. And I did. I showed up and I anointed that man and 2 others, because if you're at a hospital, there are others that need it. And the next day, the nun that was the chaplain at the time let me know that he had passed away. I've dealt with students dying in tragic accidents. I've comforted people who've lost someone to suicide. Physical death is a part of life after the fall, and none of us are untouched by it, even here at a place as wonderful as Wisdom. I've also experienced other types of death here. As a student, I died a death to my dream of being a civil engineer. I did not show up at UL and declare my major to be civil engineering and go through all of that to be a priest. And yet, here I am. I died a death to my dream of maybe one day being a professor, the new Dr. Hibbler for you engineering students here. I died a death to my dream of being a husband and a father to the at least 10 children that would be running around. I was going to have a great wife. She was going to do a good job. I wanted all that, and God threw down the Uno reverse card of all Uno reverse cards. At times, in the middle of that, I felt like everything that would make me happy was being ripped from my life. At times, I felt like the only thing that I could do was cry out to Jesus, or cry out with Jesus, my God, why have you abandoned me? There was a real death in that. And as a priest, I've experienced this as well. On my first go-round here, I experienced death to my well-intentioned but unrealistic ideals as a new priest. I will convert them with my zeal and my charm. Turns out I'm neither as zealous or as charming as I thought I was. But even if I was as zealous and charming as I think I am sometimes, I'm reminded that even the God-man had people reject him. Now, I experienced this type of death maybe most particularly as a pastor. There are many things that priests endure, many parts of people's lives that we are invited into, and there are many things that you just can't know about. As much as I would love to tell you, you can't know about all the situations, and there's a lot of suffering in that. And in it, all one can do is pray. All we can do is pray, do the best to our ability, and trust that the Lord will be pleased with the effort, that He will bring about results in His way, in His time. And I think that priests in particular, because of our conformity to Christ, the priest, are invited into this loneliness in a unique way. And so I experienced that type of death. I have also developed a greater sympathy for you parents. I used to hear you say some things, and not that I didn't believe you, but I was like, get over it. It's not that big of a deal. But that was silly of me. And so I've developed a greater sympathy for you parents who see your kids grow up, you raise them, and then they leave. I said last night that this is one of the hardest assignments in the diocese, but it's also the best. And so as a priest here, I get to meet students and walk with them. They are here when I arrive at 7 a.m. in the morning. They are here when I leave at 10 p.m. at night. They never leave. I get to sit with them in spiritual direction, in confession, in pastoral counseling. I get to go to baseball and football games with them, comedy shows and concerts. I get to know them intimately, and I come to love them deeply. I'm sure if you are a parent, you have experienced this. I have learned that I can love in a way that I never thought I could. And it's amazing. And then after not leaving ever for 4 years, they're here from sunup to sundown. They leave. They move on. They go their separate ways. They get jobs. They go to graduate school. They move out of town. And that is a painful separation. And then, a few months later, a whole new crop of students show up, and the process starts all over. We open ourselves up again to loving the new students, and because of that, we open ourselves up to 4 years later being hurt again. In all of this, we experience something of the passion and death of Jesus. In the suffering, in the loneliness, in the deaths that we go through. This is a very strange place to be. It's difficult, yet it's oddly comforting to be in it with the one we love. To be in it with the one who loved us to the end. And so I invite you through the rest of this liturgy, through the rest of this Triduum, through the rest of the, 7 or 8 months we have in this place, to pray with this. What are the ways that you have experienced suffering and loneliness at Wisdom? Maybe it was during your college years. Maybe it was as a parishioner, seeing people come and go, seeing priests come and go. Maybe it was as a new graduate feeling out that place, going from college to real life, whatever that means. Trying to find out where you belong? What are the ways that you have experienced death here? Have you buried a loved one? Did you lose a friend while you were in college or a family member? Has God shifted the trajectory of your life drastically in the time that you have been at Wisdom? It's important as we're sort of tidying up to move over to the new place, to remember these things, to handle these moments, these memories. And as hard as it may seem, to be thankful. We can be thankful in the midst of suffering and pain if we recognize that all of these things invite us to draw close to the crucified Lord. The key to having this outlook is to follow Jesus in laying down our lives. He says that they did not take his life from him, but he handed himself over freely. And so we too must hand ourselves over, offer ourselves, as it were, on the altar of the Lord. And this attitude shift from having things taken from us to offering ourselves in the way that Jesus asks helps us to be thankful and to join him in offering ourselves and our sufferings for the salvation of the world.